So I want to welcome everybody to our Diversity in the Modeling Industry series. And so what we'll do, I'm going to hook it up to Facebook Live, but I would like everybody to introduce themselves. I'll start with me. I'm Melissa Shea, the CEO of Fashion Mingle, and I want to thank you guys all for joining us. So why don't we start with Lianna? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lianna Ayala, and I am a plus-size model and influencer.
Thank you for joining us. And Kenya, how are you today?
How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. My name is Kenya Smith. I am the founder and chief designer of my line called Planet Zero Motorsports, which is leatherwear for people who like to ride motorcycles and like to be stylish and be safe at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. And Miss Tanisha?
Hello, my name is Miss Tanisha, and I am top model coach. That is who I am. I love teaching and inspiring other models to get into the business and industry that I love the right way. So,
thank you. Arkeah.
Hi, I'm Arkeah. I'm New Faces Director of HOP Models and Talent Agency.
Thank you for joining us. And Hillary?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Hillary Jockmans. I'm a government affairs consultant, but I'm also the founder of Politically in Fashion, which is a community for everyone in the fashion industry to engage on legislative issues that are important to us.
Thank you for joining us. And Morgan?
Hi, my name is Morgan Freeman, and I am an in-between model.
An in-between model. What is that?
Yes. So I'm like a size 6'8". So like Illy, she's a plus size model, and then I feel like, I don't know if, I guess they're called straight size models, would be like more of the 0 to 4, and I'm like right in the middle of that.
Okay. Great. Okay, Dell.
Hi everyone, I'm Noelle. I'm the founder and CEO of True Model Management, and we're based in New York, but represent all types of models, different sizes, ethnicities all around the world.
Thanks for joining us. Tiffany?
My name is Tiffany Tate. I'm the founder and publisher of Runa Magazine.
Thanks for joining us. Runa.
Hey, thank you, Melissa. Thank you for this awesome panel, and nice to meet all of you. I'm Runa Ray. I'm a fashion environmentalist and the founder of my own private label, Runa Ray, which works with sustainable clothing. And I'm involved with a lot of projects that have to do with like climate action. Thank you so much for having me on board.
Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, and Beverly. Oh, you're unmuted. Oh goodness, we're still, try it again.
No.
Yeah, it says it's unmuted on my side. Okay, well, it might just be an audio issue. So we'll go ahead and get started, see if you can figure it out and wave to us. You can always chat your comments.
I'm going to jump out and jump back in because I have an audio issues as well. Hopefully you can hear me.
Okay, and Tiffany, we're having trouble with your hearing you as well, at least on my end. It's sounding kind of gravelly. So, okay, and so just to let everybody know on the panel, if we start hearing feedback, I'll just ask you guys to mute, and then we'll unmute one at a time, because sometimes that happens, you know, or if there's, you know, some kind of noise in your house that could pop up. So, so let's start with Lianna. You are a model. And how long have you been a model in the industry?
I'm going on to 4 years in November.
4 years in November. Okay, so that's right. And you're plus size model, which, you know, is kind of like an additional issue that you have to deal with. So can you just like tell us, like, why did you decide to get into modeling? And just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, so first, I started off as a natural hair influencer on Instagram, and I was specifically focusing on natural hair. At that time, just having natural hair and embracing natural hair was very rare. So I showcased my journey on Instagram, and that's how I grew a following. And then I saw a contest online, and the contest was with another plus size brand and True Model Management. And it's pretty much just posting a photo of yourself and using a hashtag, and the winner will get a contract with True Model Management. And I actually won. So I've been with True Model ever since, and it's been going on to 4 years with True Model Management. And after I won that contest, everything has changed. I never thought I was going to be a plus size model because growing up, I didn't see that representation. So being a plus size model was very taboo. I didn't know it even existed because I always thought that being plus size was just wrong. You shouldn't be plus size, and how dare you be a model if you're plus size? Like, it just never clicked to me. So when I won and I started getting more opportunities, I realized I grew a platform, and I realized that representation within the plus size community is needed. I want women and little girls to see that they can be on ads and everything. So that's how my journey started. It's very different than the normal model, but I am grateful for it no matter what.
Well, and that's something that is really popular. Influencers and models and influencers. So as a woman of color, I'm sure you've faced, difficulties in that area as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about, your experience being a woman of color in the fashion industry as a model?
Well, being a plus size woman of color in the industry has been a journey. I've definitely seen the different type of microaggressions. Backstage is a huge area that needs to be improved as far as who's on set, who's doing makeup, who's doing hair. And if you cannot do my makeup or my hair, you cannot do someone that's darker or has kinkier hair, and it's not fair. And if a white model could go on set feeling beautiful, why can't I? I kind of learned how to just come to set makeup ready, hair ready, have my makeup bag just in case I have to run to the bathroom and fix. I'm also a makeup artist before I became a plus size model. So I do know behind the scenes and what should happen between just using the right foundation shade to just sanitation practices, and I don't see that. And I just feel like it's unfair because, again, I have looser curls, and if you can't do my hair, it's not fair for someone that has kinkier hair. And I feel like we still have a long way, whether it's either training the makeup artists you have or hiring Black or people of color as makeup artists and hairstylists. Also on set, I believe like mostly a lot of brands spoke out and for the Black Lives Matter movement this pandemic. And unfortunately, I still haven't seen that change on set when it comes to in-house. So these are the things I'm seeing, and I'm hoping and praying that people are sticking to their word and hiring more Black creatives and people to work on set for these brands, especially if you profit off of this community. So so I think there's a lot of change needed, but we're slowly making noise.
Okay. So are you thinking that the problem is lying with the brands not insisting on having a diverse creative team? So the brands can, if they make it clear they want a diverse creative team, then the creative team is going to bring on the people who know how to style different textures of hair. They're going to have the cosmetics that are going to have all the different shades. Do you feel like that's where the problem lies?
That's one of the problems, yes. I believe if 13% of America is Black, I believe a minimum of 13% should be represented in house. And I feel like once that changes, then we'll have the Black hairstylist and makeup artist, we'll have more say into what's happening, because I realized that brands are profiting off of us, but then in-house it looks completely different. And that just shows us that you really don't stand with us.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Morgan, how about you? How long have you been a model?
I'm a little bit newer. I have been a model probably for about a year. But my journey was a little bit different as well. I modeled as a kid a little bit, and then kind of switched over into sports. My family is just a sports family, and I played Division I volleyball in college, and so that kind of took a front seat for me. And then when I decided that I wanted to get back into it while I was in college, I was told that I needed to lose 20 pounds and straighten my hair. And I was a collegiate athlete. Like, it was impossible to lose that weight and still perform at a high level. And then also, like, my hair is curly. If I sweat, it's gonna curl. And so I just felt like it was, when I wanted to do it again, it was like, okay, yeah, sure, but don't be yourself. And so I said, forget it, and kind of just put the dream behind me. And then in 2018, I got laid off from my corporate job because I had gone to grad school and did everything that, that I was supposed to do. And then 2018, I got laid off. And then by 2019, I had gotten signed with True. So I'm fairly new. So I'm still learning and seeing all of these things, sometimes for the first time.
What's been the biggest thing that shocked you?
I would say that, kind of like Illy was pointing on about having people on set that do not know how to do your hair, or I sometimes don't have this problem because I am lighter, but not knowing how to mix shades. I've seen it on other girls on set, and it's mind-blowing to me that someone was hired and they can't do their job, because in any other field that would never happen. You can't hire a doctor that doesn't know how to do a certain type of medicine or surgery. You can't hire a teacher for a grade that she's not certified in. So how on earth is a hair or makeup artist hired not knowing how to do that model's hair?
Well, and don't they get pictures in advance?
Exactly. They're prepared. They know who's coming. They know exactly who's coming.
It's just the droppiness of the people who are doing the hiring.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, we've either worked with them before and this is who we usually use, or, they found them. And I don't know. I'm not a makeup artist or a hairstylist, so maybe someone else can speak on this. I don't know if there's a resume that you have to present. But maybe that's something that needs to happen, of showing people that you have worked with and making sure that your resume is diverse.
That's a really good point. So, okay, I really like that to think about, because on our platform, we've got over 100 categories of fashion industry professionals. And I that's a really great thing that I can bring up to our makeup artists and our hairstylists and the companies that book them, is you've got to pay attention to that, because I'm definitely seeing people say, well, I want diverse models, but I don't think that they're going the extra step. Okay, great, I figured this out, I know how to hire diverse models, but then they don't know the next step is to make sure that the makeup and the hair team has experience with diverse models.
Right. And that's not even to say that only people of color can do people of color's hair. Right. I think that it's just it's a mix. When you arrive to set, like Illy said, you don't see anyone that looks like you, and so your immediate thought is okay, what's gonna happen? And I've had great hairstylists and makeup artists that are not of color, but then why isn't the stylist a person of color, or the director, or the photographer? You just see nobody, and that is so. It's so off-putting, because you're that's when I feel like you walk in and I am here to check a box. Yeah. They just want me to be the token Black girl for this campaign, and that is it. And it's these layers of just problems
on this things before, because that is that awkward transition point that we're at, because you know, as someone who has, you know, a white-owned business, you know, as, you know, I mean, obviously we've always been very diverse at Fashion Mingle, but, you know, with everything that started happening in the spring with the protests, you know, it became like extremely important for white-owned businesses to actually just like, wait a minute, you're part of the problem if you're not part of the solution.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's that uncomfortable feeling of like, okay, I need to make sure I have you know, diversity. So you feel like you are participating in tokenism. And, you know, because it's not yet just really, really natural. Because we have to white-owned businesses have to broaden their network, which is like what you guys are saying backstage. So how do you feel about, like, you hate that feeling of feeling like a token, but do you have any suggestions for businesses who are, you know, really want to put in the work to expand their network so it's not just a token?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only way you can really do it is making sure that you're aware of it. Like, I think a lot of these issues have just gone without anybody realizing it, because sometimes I don't realize it. Like, I am so used to it now that, like, I'll walk into a space and not realize, oh my gosh, I'm the only Black girl here. It's just so normal. So, like, being able to see it and saying, like, okay, you know, we're trying to do our part. We have the representation in the model, but like no one else. And so it's knowing that and then hiring like that, or, you know, making a space for that. If you don't even have, you don't have to lay off your team or clean house, but maybe now it's looking at who your interns are and who your next hiring class is going to be. There are so many ways to get people of color involved, but I think that this has just become so normal that you don't even see it if you're not actively looking for it.
Right. I think a lot of white-owned businesses are realizing, because it takes an effort to expand your network. You know, it takes time. So I appreciate that. I think that's definitely really important to talk about and realize that it is a process to get to where inclusivity is just normal.
Yeah, this happened. I mean, this has been an issue for hundreds of years. So we're naive to think that like one, you know, pandemic is going to get us straight. You know, it's not going to happen that quickly, but it takes endurance, and you have to keep like the fight going of, okay, we posted the Black square. Okay, we hired the models. Now let's keep building. And hopefully we can get to a point where it is, you know, the 13% of people are people of color, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've had that brought up in the past in some of our other sessions that, you know, just like as a goal, a business can say 15% of the population is this race, 9% is that race, you know, making sure that, you know, you're at least trying to use that as a guide, maybe.
Yeah, and putting it into your goals. Like I worked in corporate America, and I know that quarterly there is a goal, and I don't see why you can't put diversity into your business goal.
Yeah,
But
we'll talk to Hillary about that.
I was going to say at the same time too, you don't want to run the risk of not looking at who's qualified for the job either, because you're only focused on race. We have a responsibility as well to bring brand awareness. If we don't feel that they're supporting us, why are we continuing to support them? You know, we had all back in July, you know, when the Black Lives Matter and all that happened, blackout days where we stopped, you know, supporting for a day those particular brands who didn't support diversity and things of that nature. So once you start hitting people in the pocket, then they'll start to realize, because African Americans, females at that, have the greatest purchasing power. We buy any and everything. So when we realize we have the power, we could have been tackled this a long time ago, but we still gonna buy our high-end designer shoes and bags and stuff, regardless of if we see ourselves represented in their ad campaigns. So that mentality has to change as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's what brands care about, that, you know,
Right.
people at the corporate level, all they care about the numbers. And so the threat of losing that revenue, I think is a very powerful tool.
Right.
Yeah. Kenya, you're a designer. What do you have to say about the modeling industry from your perspective?
Well, you know, it's you know, it's a very, very tough and difficult industry, and I actually really feel a lot for the models and what they have to go through, because you know, unlike acting or singing, you are literally gambling, you know, whether or not you're going to get a job solely on the way you look that day, and whether or not you get that job is going to be solely on the mood of the person looking at you walking that day. So if he woke up that morning and he was determined to, for instance, get a plus size model to do this campaign, and then he sees Lianna, then she's going to get that job. But if he had in his mind that morning that he wanted this European size 2 model, that's all he's looking for. He's not going to be open to anything else. And it's unlike like going to a acting audition where you can kind of blow somebody away with your stage presence or your ability to recite lines back quickly, or or singing. You know, you just have this. You may not be the prettiest person, but you have this gorgeous voice that just blows everybody away. So I do feel for the models. They have a very difficult way of getting through the business. In regards, kind of just backtrack on the tokenism thing, and we're certainly going through a period of tokenism right now. I mean, you have companies like General Mills are pulling Aunt Jemima off the shelves because of the black face on there. The one I have to say about that, if a person, white, black, or Chinese or whatever, has made a decision to put you in a position of where now you're kind of representing their decision to put you somewhere, concentrating on being a token is not the thing you should do. Concentrate on blowing everybody away and becoming the standard, and make it put in their mind, oh, you know what, this wasn't as big of a risk as I thought it was going to be, putting a black face or a black person or a person of color in his position, because they really turned out to be fantastic. Their look, their walk, the way they fit the clothes, whatever it is. I've been there. I know I've been in places where they were saying that he's the black guy there. But what I do to kind of fight that whole black guy image is to be the most awesome guy, black or white, in that circle, in that position, and to actually make sure they remember who I was based on the work that I did, despite being black or being whatever color. And if someone has given you an opportunity, take the opportunity. If it's because they think it's a token and making them feel good, take the opportunity and blow them away and show them that you were worth every ounce of the risk they took to put you there, or scrutiny they may have gone through to put you in that position. That's what you should concentrate on. That's what's important. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, and I first got to know your name because you were showing your collection on the runway, and I was just in love with it. And so I didn't know you, but I knew you were an awesome guy, and I didn't know your color until you came out. But I already knew, like, oh my God, this is the most amazing designer. So I've been your, you know, I was your stalker for years, and then, you know, we became good friends. So, so I can attest, Kenya's an awesome guy, regardless of color. So, Miss Denisha.
Yes. And so just to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Kenya Smith said, when I'm a lot older than the newer models. I've been in the game for over 30 plus years. I just turned 50 in August. So I've been doing this for a long time. And what he's saying to me is very true, because the reason why I sustained my position in Minneapolis, as you guys know, we have a very low percentage statewide of people of color. So I made sure that when I showed up and I realized, coming from New York, because I went to New York in 19 to start my career, when I moved to Minneapolis and realized that the game was so different, I had to change so much, my attitude, my walk, my energy, everything. Minnesota nice, had to smile, okay? And so I started looking at what was going on behind the scenes, not being able to do my hair, not having the right makeup. So I learned, honestly, how to become a makeup artist. I started purchasing wigs, and that ended up being my signature. Why would I want to walk on a set and make it challenging? Because I knew they weren't going to hire people that could do my hair. I wanted to make it easy. I wanted to be a great model. So I started purchasing wigs, and I showed up and my hair was ready, and they loved that. I would have textured wigs, curly wigs, straight wigs, and they could choose. And that's how I got my name out there. They were like, that's the model with the wigs. Hire her because she's going to come in ready. They didn't have to do my hair. And that's sad, but I had to up my game so that I can continue working. And having wigs was a way for me to become the model that everybody knew, because they didn't have to do textured hair. And it's sad, but I had to be that best and that great model on set to make it easy to keep coming back. And slowly I started teaching other models, and that's how I became a top model coach. I'm like, Black girls, this is what we have to do. It's sad, but until we get that to that point where they start hiring people that could do our hair and our makeup, do your job the best that you can to keep getting hired back. And I got hired over and over and over again. And I would wear wigs literally that looked just like my hair, but it made it easy for them.
So you're in Minnesota, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you have your top model coaching business there.
Yes.
Do you coach people of all colors, or are you primarily coaching Black women?
I'm glad you asked that, Melissa, because let me tell you, when I first started my business, it was because one of the top agencies, which I will not name here in Minneapolis, they hired me to teach their models. They literally were like, you are a great runway model. Can you help some of our newer models, which were all Caucasian? They never sent me a little girl of color. And these were like 12, 13, 16-year-old young girls. And I would teach them how to walk. They would pay me, and they would book their first runway shows. And the agents were always like, oh my gosh, she booked her show. Thank you so much. And I said, oh, wow, why am I not getting any girls of color to train? I want to help them out too. And then when I started my business, I asked the agent, I said, okay, I'm going to start a coaching business since you guys keep bringing me models to coach. Can I put my flyers inside of your agency? They said yes. And I kid you not, the owner of the agency said to me one day, she called me in her office. She said, we definitely don't mind sending you people, but your flyer is too urban. They did not like the fact that I had myself on there, models of color, that I was trying to gain clients of color. They did not like that my flyers had too many Black people on it, including myself. And I said, well, I'm a woman of color, so I'm not taking my picture off. So my energy here in Minnesota is a strong Black woman first, and then model second. So, and I now open my own business after, it's been a while. I just had my company open my doors a couple of years ago, but I've been in the game for a long time. And it's been a struggle, but we'll see how things continue to progress. My company is probably about, I would say, a 70-30 split, where most of my clients are people of color. And that I am very proud of, because I'm helping the young aspiring models of color get into the business. So.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it takes, right? You've got to, you've got to have someone who's really focused on bringing up the next generation of models of color, so that we have even more in the industry. That's great. Well, it's a wonderful story. You should write a book. you know?
I have a book that I'm trying to get published right now, like literally it's done. That is my next goal. I didn't mention that before on any of our bios. I didn't put that in there, but yeah, I have a book completely done about my modeling boot camp. That's what it's actually called, Miss Tanisha's Modeling Boot Camp 101.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. We'll have to do a mastermind webinar just on that when you're ready to release your book. So Beverly, did we get your audio fixed? We can't hear Beverly. Okay, well, Beverly, if you have something you want to share, you can type it in the chat and I can read it off. Yeah, I don't, let's see, mute audio, stop video. Or you know what? Oh, she left. So that's what I was going to suggest, leave and try to come back. So hopefully we'll be able to get her back. Tiffany, I want to hear from you from the perspective of, you know, doing editorial shoots and publishing. Tell us about, you know, Linger magazine and just some of your experiences finding the right content for your magazine.
Well, I started Linger magazine 10 years ago, and it was mid-recession, and so the current times are very, very similar to that time of not being able to, I had gotten laid off and was not able to find another editorial position. So I just kind of created my own position and I created Linger magazine. And for those who were subscribed to those publications that I was writing for, I introduced my new magazine to them and they heavily supported it. It was just a really great feeling to know that I could kind of step out on my own. And so for me, seeing all of that support, I wanted to support those who were also in the fashion and beauty industries because I believe in collaboration. And there was a mixture of people from all walks of life, from different cultures, who stepped up and said, hey, I have a shoot in 3 weeks. I'd love to submit it. Do you want it? So it was a lot of collaboration, and it made me feel really good that I was able to create something which initially started to basically continue working. I wanted to continue writing. I wanted to, you know, continue interviewing. But then in return, I had so much support from fashion photographers from the US, as well as London, as well as Canada, who were already doing a lot of diverse work with models of color. It kind of came to me, and it also just established that we have to keep this going. It's very important. And I'm a huge fan of independent media, and I think that looking at the larger publications and how they're picky and selective, I think they're finding out right now during this time that if you don't adapt and if you don't change, it's not going to be something that you can go back to the way things were, because we are starting to mobilize independently and saying, you know what, this does have to change. And so I'm really proud that I've always been doing that. Even, you know, in a lot of times I was behind my brand. A lot of people did not know that I was a Black woman. A lot of people thought my publication was based in London, and I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. So it helped me to kind of reflect for the last 10 years, kind of like the groundwork that I had done, but I can't claim it alone. It is my publication and I'm very proud of it, but there were so many models and fashion photographers who literally came to me and said, you know, we really love what you're doing. We want to support what you're doing. So when we would have photo shoots, it would be the same people who submitted editorials in the beginning. So their team was diverse. You'd have a great model who knew her stuff, or he knew his stuff, and you didn't really have to tell them what to do because they've been doing it for so long. And I think having the platform to do that has been so important. I have always attended model castings for events that I work with, especially events, fashion events that we cover. And I always request the sit-in on the model casting for that very reason, because I want to know that the fashion events that we're working with or that we're covering are diverse. They are seeking talent that may be untapped, and they're not looking for just a specific look. And they would always have a table full of designers who were looking for the models who were going to represent their line in the fashion runway event, and they would always select a diverse lineup of models. And it just made me really, really happy and proud So my goal is to continue that. I think that those who have not been doing it in the past, for whatever reason, I think is a shame. But I'm happy to be a part of helping continue to change that. That's my goal.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for just like mistakes that you see, brands make, where they can actually start being a part of the solution?
I do. I think that I don't think there's that big of a blind eye to it. I think that those who are part of the team, they see it. They need to speak up.
Okay.
You don't have to make but what you can do after the shoot, maybe at a lull times, pull the person in charge to the side and say, well, that's a great model, but she was also great. What was the distance with that? Sometimes you just have to speak up. It doesn't have to be an ugly confrontation. It's speak up. To me, that is a huge part of fixing the bad system behind the scenes, is speaking up. I also do believe that you have to embrace uniqueness. Everyone is not the same. Everyone does not have the same features. Everyone is unique. I think brands need to embrace that and know that you have a product that you need to sell, but someone's uniqueness could exemplify that. But you have to be willing to embrace uniqueness. So that's my tip.
That's really good. Really feedback. The part about speaking up, I mean, that's, in whatever is the problem in the workplace, speaking up is always a hard thing to do, no matter what it is. Do you have any, like, from the perspective of a Black member of the team, that if they're seeing racism happening, do you have advice on how they should address it that you think is, that you could just give them so that they feel the confidence to speak up and that it's not going to negatively impact their job?
That's a tough question. I know that everyone always wants to save their position in their role. I do. But there's always a very professional way to speak up. It can be just simply, I do remember a situation that someone shared with me, so I'll share a little bit about that, about someone really, really trying to just get this particular model to be in their show, even though they didn't kind of go with the look that they were looking for. They just wanted them to avoid having to choose the model of color because maybe in their mind that model was urban or whatever was going through their head. And then that designer said, basically kind of, I don't want to say took over the conversation, but addressed the model who's being overlooked. Could you walk again? Can I see that walk again? And making it a situation where everyone could see that person overlooking that model, kind of putting them on the spot, but in a professional manner, so that the model is not uncomfortable. Either one is not uncomfortable. There's no easy way to speak up if you have gotten used to not speaking up. So there are really no steps that I can give you to do it, but it has to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that what happens, you get really comfortable not speaking up. So to think about actually speaking up, it's very hard because you're thinking about your job, you're thinking about a lot of things. But I think that if that one piece does not happen, it will just continue to happen. So I think in every situation, it's different, but you still do need to speak up, even if it's in the moment. I just think that you have to think in the moment and you need to speak up. I really can't think of any kind of steps because I've never actually gone through it.
Well,
but I know people who have. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. No. People.
Oh no, I know that those have called me and wanted advice on if they did handle that situation properly. And I would always tell them the fact that you spoke up off the bat was the right thing to do.
That's good.
And it does make people uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable because no one speaks up. So it's going to be new for a lot of people. a lot of people, but it definitely has to happen. And I know for some it'll be easier because some people are, you know, they can interact with people a lot easier than some. Some are kind of shy or they just want to do their job and go home. I understand that too, but it's still a conversation that needs to happen, and every situation will be unique to that situation, and that's gonna take some guts and some courage.
Yeah, and I think from the perspective of white people on the team being allies, you know, we have to start recognizing what's happening. And sometimes I don't think that because it's not our experience, we might not see it. But, you know, I think I'd love like some advice for, you know, how people can just like make a conscious effort if they're on a team to make sure that there isn't discrimination happening. Does Denisha, Miss Denisha, do you have any advice on that?
I'm gonna kind of keep going with what Tiffany was saying a little bit about the speaking up. So what she's saying is absolutely right. As far it is hard and it's challenging, and it's never a great way to approach someone about first racism or, you know, them not being fair. It's just not a great way to do it. And I have a model who I really admired here in Minnesota, and she's very popular. And I called her one day and I asked for some advice about speaking up, because I was hearing, you know, we were kind of talking about amongst ourselves, you know, models of color not being treated fairly and things of that nature. And I think Beverly popped up there for a second. And so I called her and I had a conversation. She actually told me, do not speak up. And I'm gonna tell you why she told me that. She said, because when I spoke up and I called, again, a really popular agency here in Minnesota, and said something to her about how she felt she was being treated as a woman of color, they stopped booking her. And I can attest to that. That does happen, because the more popular I became on my own, agents were having a problem. And they were talking to me about it. And it was really sad that they did not appreciate my success and my growth, because they weren't able to control some things. And I stopped getting booked, and I started having to go out on my own and contracting and booking myself, which is what I do not want to do as a model. I do prefer to be under an agency. So it is, when you speak up, I decided to not take her advice, and I did contact them. And I said, well, I feel like when I'm on set, this is what's happening to me. And I went to my agent to see if they would back me. And they were saying, no, it's probably just your imagination, or no, I don't think so. And I said, how can you say that when you're not a person of color? You have no idea what I go through as a model. I'm coming to you as an agent to try to speak to the clients, however way they felt was gentle or to get the attention. And my agents here did not support it. They just rather stop working me as much, even though they—
Miss Denisha for a second.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, am I back?
I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, and they actually stopped wanting to book me as much, even though at the time I was one of the top models and I was able to make a full-time living off of it. But when I spoke up, I'm telling you, my bookings changed, and that's really sad. It's really sad. So it is a challenge, but I did speak up. I didn't care, and that's why I'm working and doing my own thing now still. So.
I think we've lost Melissa. She's frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Miss Denisha, how long ago was that you had that experience?
So this experience with me actually asking the other model, she's older than myself, but like I said, she's very successful here in Minnesota. And this conversation happened between us probably about 5 years ago. And that's why I said my company is still new as far as having a venue. I opened my school, and I also have the Model Boutique and Company, which is an agency. I opened that just 2 years ago after I saw my career really decline because I spoke up. But I'm like, you guys, I'm grown. I have a family to feed. This is my career. This is my job. And it's almost like they were okay if I ate or not. Because I spoke up, I stopped getting booked as much. And my clients that I work for now are outside of Minnesota, and that's really unfortunate. I've had a client in Atlanta that will fly me to Atlanta twice a year to host her events. And I have an agent in Iowa that books me more than 8 agents here. and I had to seek work outside of my own state because of racism. And I thought that was really sad, only because I spoke up.
Well, thank you for speaking up, because like Morgan was saying, with awareness, we need more awareness, and thank goodness we have the internet so it could spread a little bit faster, even though it's not going at pace fast enough. Let's keep it going in the right direction, because with more people speaking up, that will educate and, you know, hopefully create a movement of change faster. So
yeah, and I think that, like, thank you for using that word, Dale, because I think that's a really big problem from the white community, is the lack of awareness of the true depth of the problem. And, you know, I mean, I have to say, the stories I've heard in the, you know, the last 3 sessions we've done on this have been shocking to me, even though I've covered backstage at Fashion Week for 20 seasons. And like, I don't see it, because I'm just like kind of there around. So it didn't even occur to me, you know, because I'm just like there doing my job, you know? So I think the awareness is critical, that we understand the depth of the problem, and then we start recognizing it when it happens, so that we can speak up as well. Because I think that it has to be, everybody has to speak up. It's not, we can't just like rely on, you know, the poor person who's being discriminated against to be speaking up. You know, I would like white people to be able to recognize when something's going wrong, even if it's in a subtle way.
Yeah, and if anyone could voice solutions, and because I feel like a lot of people might be like, okay, we know there's a problem, and then they don't know how to fix it. So anything that anyone can lend their voice to helping, like really mark it up and step by step, like need this, and you know, maybe we need to make it more formal.
And I really too encourage, you know, anyone on the panel or anyone who's listening, you know, if there's something like where you really like think at you know, at some point in time, like, you know, this is exactly, you know, the toolbox we need to have, you know, that's something that we can use the Fashion Mingle platform to promote. And I know other people are working on this as well. Dell, you were mentioning to me about some type of agreement that brands have to sign at True Model now?
No, we haven't implemented that they have to sign yet. We're asking models and people from the industry to give us their suggestions. We have 10 points written up that are been part of our corporate culture, like ever since we started. And it was just like intuitive and like not really a planned thing. It was way before it became big news about being diverse and inclusive, because at True Model Management, we've always represented like the true person and all different types of people, which was kind of unique and a little unusual when we started. You know, I would say it was like plus models too, very early on, you know, it started that and transitioned into everyone. Cause I always looked at whole people and not, you know, who's best for the job. I believe it was Tiffany or Miss Denisha said the person was best for the job. So what we find being managers for models, though, we're directed by the market, by the brand. They tell us what they want, so it's really not our choice. And I have noticed some positive, at least for the past decade or so, that it's going in the right direction. I was a model for 20-something years, even before that. So I feel like in the past, you know, 3 decades or so, we're definitely taking steps in the right direction. We just need to accelerate a little more. And I mentioned technology earlier, and I do think that advances in technology have helped accelerate the positivity for the movement in like diversity and inclusion. And like I said before, I feel like some solutions are lacking. So we're always looking to figure out how to create solutions. So, you know, we've been asking our models and friends and business associates over a little bit of time, as the models had mentioned, that many makeup artists don't have the makeup for all the skin tones. They don't do the hair properly. So we've compiled a list of recommendations, and we could share that with you soon if anyone wants. You can like email us at info@truemodel.net. And will share that with anyone. I just want to get everyone's approval that I could say like, oh, you recommended. I want to give everyone credit that recommended. And
we lost your audio, Dale. Oh, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah, you had mentioned before, Melissa, about, you know, it's a business, you know, modeling and advertising, everything. So I do believe that from talking with the brands and everything, it's about the dollars. But now that we have all the data and voices can be heard, you know, through social media, and clients and brands get immediate feedback of who's, you know, buying, who's liking, how do they want to change styles. There are some designers that like change styles on the fly now because they're getting comments all over social media, like, oh, it would be better if it was a wider leg, or whatever it might be. So it's good that uniqueness and authenticity is, we have more of that. Realizing now that there are so many markets that were untapped before, and that underrepresented demographics. So hopefully they use that data for good, and we'll be representing more and more people every day.
That's great. Beverly, let's test your audio. Can I know you've got a lot of great stories to tell.
Uh-oh.
We can't hear you. You know, Beverly, we're gonna have to solve the audio problem, and we'll just have you on your own webinar all by yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Well, Runa, I want to get you in here because I want to talk about colorism and what you're doing with the United Nations to bring a spotlight on that. You're a fashion designer. You've shown at New York Fashion Week like 3 or 4 times, and you're from India, but you're living in the United States right now, correct?
Yes. Yes. So it's interesting because when you talk about the models in the, I mean, listening to Dale right now, I'm really happy with what's going to be happening, because till last season, I wasn't able to get too many Black girls, because you probably have like 90%, which are like white girls who I have to choose from. And you got like 10%. And of the 10% that I put across, probably the girls are not available. And I'm facing the same problem right now in San Francisco with some of the modeling agencies, because I want to shoot with Black girls for this season. And I do not have much choices. And the ones that are available are not available. You know what I mean? So it kind of gets to be really difficult for a designer to kind of work in these small constraints. So, well, that's from the design side. Another thing which I noticed was, like you've seen, most of my shows, I kind of use a lot of diversity, and they've always been like a good mix of white women. You've got, you know, women from the East, and you have like Black women. I haven't cast any Indian women yet, but I use a lot of them in India. The one thing that really, really shook me up was, it was the Black girls who would come to me and say, thank you so much. And I never understood it. I never got it. And I was like, why would you want to thank me? I mean, you know, we're doing a show together. But they would always come by and say, thank you so much for this opportunity. And it never struck me till when I shot, like in February, another Black girl. She was gorgeous. And I was like, oh my God, you must be like setting the runway on fire. And she was like, nobody signed me up. I said, why is that? And she was like, she was gorgeous. And I said, really? She's like, yeah, so I'm with this agency and I've just decided to go independent. It was only after staying here in the US, like since the pandemic, I've kind of gotten to understand a lot to do with like the Black Lives Matter, and started getting into the entire system and understanding what the fashion industry is also doing when it comes to like unbiased racism, you know, that could occur to it. But anyways, coming back to the story of colorism. Now, colorism is basically a term used for racial prejudice or color prejudice that exists within your own ethnicity. So right now on this panel, we've got like, I can see like 3 white people, I'm brown, and I can see the rest of you Black, right? Colorism is a term where amongst the people of the same ethnicity, you would have a color prejudice. So people of a lighter skin are obviously taken on a higher bias compared to the people of darker skin tones. I myself, I wouldn't be able to identify a darker skin tone or a lighter skin tone amongst the Black people, but I would probably be able to do that in my Indian, Indian subcontinent. So that is basic colorism. But interestingly, colorism is not even a term. Even if you type it out on the computer, the autotype doesn't even give you colorism. It gives you it gives you a typo. It was basically a term which was coined by this one activist called Alice Walker in her book in 1983, when she speaks about colorism in a book called In Search of Mother Garden. India is one of the oldest civilizations, and it has never been color biased from the beginning of time. We've always had people of different colors. If you go to the north, you had people who were like much fairer because they're near the Himalayas. You go to the northeast because you have China on the border. You have like, a wheatish yellowish skin tone. If you go down south, which is the southern peninsula, you have people who are really dark skinned. But there was never a problem of color. You even had gods and goddesses, which is very, very prevalent in the Indian system of life, where you had gods and goddesses who were also extremely dark skinned, and that was considered to be beautiful. So you didn't have any problem. The problem arose when we started getting colonized by the British. So the British came into India, and this was in the 1600s. But remember, we were already colonized by the Mughals, who were the Muslim invading clan that had come in. When the British came in, that was when the color prejudice started, because they believed to be the most intelligent, superior race meant to come and rule this inferior Black race. And Churchill was one of the largest proponents when he said, I hate these Indians, the Black community who have a beastly religion. So it starts off from there. And what happens is that the British people, they take a lot of light-skinned Indians and start giving them a lot more advantages compared to the dark-skinned Indians. So there's a color bias that starts already, it starts spreading. People do not understand it, and even after so many years of independence, this stays within the people's mind because they associate color with a certain societal privilege. And whereas the darker people are supposed to be doing the menial labors because that's what the British used to make them do. The British used to always make the darker skinned people do like the sepoy jobs, whereas the lighter skinned Indians were like akin to the British. So you would have them in the parties, you would have them socializing, and that's when the color rift actually started. So unfortunately, we've had this in the Indian subcontinent for so many years, even after independence, that you've got like several skin cosmetic agencies. It's like it's called Fair and Lovely. So Fair and Lovely, this one particular cream accounts to around 450 million USD. That's the amount, and its rise is around 15 to 20% annually. People need this for when you're Fair and Lovely, it trickles down to matrimonial columns, because in India you have a lot of arranged marriages that happen. The concept of love marriage is something which is like you oppose your parents and you get married to somebody else where both the families either approve of or they don't approve of. But most times you're looking for a groom or a bride on a matrimonial column. So it's like when grooms wanted, you would get the person's name, you would get, what he's working as. So you'd automatically know which financial bracket he comes from, and then fair. Or they would never say dark, they would say wheatish skin, like the wheat. It would, it's like, you guys know what wheat is, right? It's what's that thing, Melissa, when you, like the chana, the gram, the color of it, beige, okay? Yeah, so you would say like, it's either beige skinned or you're fair skinned, and you got to choose from that. So this again trickles down to a lot of things.
Somebody said. Chickpeas.
Yes.
Somebody on the comments.
Yes, exactly.
African Americans used to have the paper bag test. So We have the same thing in this country among African Americans. So we get it. We understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. So it's pretty common. And then you also have a lot of celebrities who kind of started endorsing the color of, you know, like the Fair and Lovely. And they're like really famous ones who were like dark skin when they started off in the industry, but then they claimed that they started using this one cream and they got light skin. So that's kind of caused a lot of uproar because it causes a lot of disconcert between people. And people do not want that, but there's a lot of unconscious bias. There's another very interesting incident, which I will give you very quickly. This was, I think, at the Indian National Museum in Delhi. Most of the sculptures, which are the gods and goddesses, were made out of black stone. Now, we do not know whether it was made out of black stone because there was no other stone available or it was granite that was easily available. But when you want to go and buy the same little, the same little statuette that is probably carved by the Indian artisan, he would give it to you in a white stone. And you're like, why would I want this in a white stone when the original is in a black? He's like, nobody wants to buy a black god and goddess. So when it goes so when it goes trickling down into religion, then you know that this man-made construct can get really bad because our country is very religiously driven, and you cannot get something such as colorism to kind of trickle down into something such as into religion, and even in schools where you would be told, like, I'm considered to be dark-skinned, like really dark-skinned. And in school, you're told, do not go out in the sun because you're going to get tanned. When you go to college, you go out and people are like trying to sell you a cream and saying, you know, they do not sell it to you saying that it's going to make you fair. They're going to be like, it's going to remove your tan. So you have like there's certain ways of getting the message across to tell you that you got to look fairer to look more beautiful. And so, like, you know, you're like made to use like a paste of turmeric and sandalwood so that it kind of gets you lighter. So I think these are all like, and this media constructed, this engagement in this cross-cultural color bias is really important, that people need to understand the history about it rather than just going with what they perceive right now and people making money off it. Once you go back to the history, why is it that we as Indians who did not have any color bias started having off a color bias? Then you would be like, I don't think I want to be this person.
Yeah.
And
it's clear why that's a problem in India and why it's a problem in the United States.
Yes.
I want to get in Hillary to talk about the government initiatives and corporate initiatives, but Arkeah, I wanted to, ask you about the issue of, colorism. Do you see issues about shades of skin tone when you're working with brands who are placing models?
Well, I work as a new faces that work there. I'm more so focused on the models and getting them prepped for client submissions. So I tell them all the time when they do ask the question, how many opportunities is it out there for models of color? As Dale was saying, over the past 10 years, we are starting to see more opportunities because the way social media has influenced how clients now book talent. So I tell them you have to be open-minded. And now with, brands and even models creating their own opportunities, if there's not opportunities out there for you with the particular brands or whatever, you now know how to create your own. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hillary, tell us about, what we can do, what's happening at the corporate level, and, what you're recommending for companies to do in order to start addressing this problem.
Thanks, Melissa. I'll take it from a slightly different perspective and sort of what the role of government is in this. And I think there's two ways that they can be impactful here. One is to lead by example, right? So the federal government, for example, they employ over 2 million people, not including the Postal Service, not including the military, not including reserve. So just you're talking about a large segment of the workforce here. It was at the government level that you started having provisions about non-discrimination based on age, race, sexual orientation, the federal government was the one that put in protections for the Family Medical Leave Act, things like that. And so federal government sort of lead by example, right? So they can do better by their own employees. And then by extension, the private sector often will follow these initiatives. I mean, those things I just mentioned that started at the federal government level, those are very pervasive now in the private sector. Right now, the Congress is the most diverse Congress we've ever had. And so sort of building on what folks have said before, you want to have the right people in the room to have this conversation. So Congress is in a very different position than they ever have been before. We've got more women, we've got more minorities than before, and we're poised to have even more after the next election. So I think that really changes the conversation and the dynamic when you've got the right people in the room. The second way the government gets involved is through the regulation of certain entities, right? I mean, they've got control over financial service companies and media companies, anything that requires a federal license or regulation. And there's some legislation about that right now. Congressman Meeks, who's a congressman from New York, he has a bill that talks about diversity on corporate boards and requiring companies that are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission to publish this information, right? And the transparency is sort of the first step. So we know what is the makeup of their board in terms of ethnicity and gender, and what are their plans to increase that, things like that. So, all these things are sort of first steps. There's also some legislation out there to have more diversity in media in terms of who owns the major television stations, who owns the major FM radio stations. To the extent people do still listen to FM radio, it's estimated that only 10% ownership is of women or people of color. And so again, that feeds into the perspective and the stories that are told and who's at the table. And so that's a role that government can have in promoting these ideals. Now, Congress itself and government has a long way to go for themselves. I mean, they can certainly be doing a lot more. I said Congress is the most diverse it's been, but take a look behind whose name is on the door, that's not necessarily reflected at the staff level.
Right.
And so there's a lot of room for improvement there. But
so I assume this legislation you're talking about is in the House, not the Senate.
This corporate board legislation has passed in the House, and there is actually broad support for it in the Senate. And there's a chance that it could pass in the Senate this year as well. It has support from the Chamber of Commerce as well as the NAACP, the Urban League. And so there's a good, it's a good groundswell of support there. Of course, timing's, it's always difficult in election year. They're not here very much. There's a pandemic. Nobody's even in the building. But it's impressive to see the amount of support. And actually the Senate sponsor, one of the Senate sponsors is Kamala Harris. It's obviously the VP nominee right now. So.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had a very rough couple of years, I'll say it, from the White House. Has there been, I know there's been a lot of attacks on environmental regulations and stuff like that. Has regulations protecting diversity, has that held, or have there been any attempts to weaken it?
Well, I'm not sure how much there is actually on the books in terms of regulations protecting diversity. You see, for racial diversity anyway, certainly for sexual orientation, we've seen a lot of rollback of that in the military. Transgender rights, things like that have really been curtailed, to say the least, under this administration. But it's certainly not been an environment where you're seeing a lot of new initiatives in this space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it is pretty exciting to have Kamala as the VP. So I'll be having my little yard sign soon.
So, I think it's important for when you do see a bill like this, that, maybe it doesn't directly impact your industry, but you can see the relationship, you can see the importance to corporate America, to industry in general, to speak up and to reach out to your elected representative and say hey, this is important. I support this. I'm a constituent. I'm a small business owner in your district. I want you to support this legislation as well.
Yeah, I used to be very, very active in politics. It was actually my first career before fashion. And I had a congressman tell me once that if 10 people from his district write him a letter, he's really scared. And what that told me was that, you know, we're not reaching out to, you know, they're there to represent us and do what we want, but we're not systematically reaching out because I don't think we have the confidence that they care. But he let me know, he was like, he considers that really, really big when when 10 people are writing him a letter about one issue from his district. So I think that Hillary, maybe we can get those bills from you that we should keep an eye on for the fall, and we can include that in the blog article, because then we can actually, you know, show people how to find the phone number of their representatives and call to support that legislation.
Absolutely. As someone who worked on Capitol Hill for a dozen years, I can tell you they do absolutely keep track of all the comments that come in, whether it be, this will date myself, by fax, they used to come in, but also by email, on social media now. You know, to an extent, people are actually sending hard copies of letters. I mean, they keep track of those things. There's a reason why you call your office representative, they ask what your address is. They're not being nosy. They want to know, like, oh yeah, this person really is a constituent here. Yeah. And you know, members get reports daily, weekly, whatever, about the contact they're getting. So I always encourage folks to reach out, because that they want to hear and they do listen. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's great to use email because it's something you can do quick and fast. But I am a big fan. I think it's really important to write type out the letter, put it in an envelope, and mail it to your congressperson. That is it, because then you have a better chance of getting noticed, because they're not getting as much, paper mail from constituents.
Normally I would agree, but during this pandemic, when there's nobody here, I would definitely, they must have
with the post office.
I definitely, the rise of their use of social media is incredible over the last couple of years. And then really with the pandemic right now, the average age of a congressperson is 70 plus years old, not your target social media group. But their staff's a lot younger, and they have gotten used to this, and that is an excellent way to get the message across, get campaigns out, all those types of things. So
yeah, I spend quite a bit of time on my congresswoman's Facebook, and we are in opposite parties, and I would say that I have a little thing that I do. I have I do like a shocked smiley face, emoji. And then I put, your racism is showing, with an exclamation point. And I do that on our local newspaper when people are saying something ugly. And I do it on my congresswoman's Facebook page. Because it's I don't want to get in fights, because those go nowhere on Facebook. But I have felt like I've made a difference a few times with people when they realize what they're saying. They don't realize sometimes how racist they really are. But I do live in an area, I live upstate, and it's extremely white up here. I'm from Texas, which is extremely diverse. And so, I am starting to see, a really unpleasant level of racism that, from local people. And I know they're local because they're on the local, newspaper site and stuff like that. So it is concerning to me, but I think that's why we just have to be much more bold about, what we're saying and doing. And, we have to push the racism back under the rock, and I feel like it's, the last 4 years under this administration, it's been allowed to thrive. So
what made you speak up, Melissa? What made you decide to take on this?
Well, I've always, I was raised to, not consider, not to be racist at all. I mean, and it was something I did, even though I grew up in white areas, so I grew up in Missouri when I was young, very white areas, but nobody in my family ever said anything racist. My parents didn't talk about it. So then when I actually first encountered it, I was in Mississippi, as an adult, and we were visiting a family member of my husband's, and I was horrified. And my husband was so horrified, we actually left early and drove back to Texas because we were scared. We're white and we're listening to white people talk about Black people, and it put fear in us. Wow. Even though we weren't the ones being threatened. And that was a huge wake up call to me, because I just never been around it. And I'm from Austin in Texas, which is incredibly diverse. So, you know, it's a lot like New York City. And then when I started Fashion Mingle, you know, I always wanted, definitely always want to use the platform for good. But this spring, the signs at the Black Lives Matter protests that said white silence is violence. That's the first time I'd ever seen that sign, and it just like struck me. And I was like, that is true. And that's all it took for me to realize, you know, I have to do what I can do, you know, and everybody has to look at what they can do. And I have this platform, so that's what I'm doing. You know?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I just saw that too, white silence is violence. I just saw that like literally a day or two ago for the first time, where I actually paid attention to it. So I appreciate you, definitely.
When I saw that sign at the protests on television, it just like, it was just a wake up call, you know?
Yeah.
So
well, again, thank you.
Sign, thank you. So, but
I know we have to go, and I had a question for Tiffany. We have to go, but yeah, I had a question for Tiffany, because like when I went to my agent and she didn't want to believe this was, you know, years ago, how would Tiffany handle something like that if her talent came to her and said, look, I'm just, you know, being discriminated against, this time being treated as a model of color on set? I'm just curious, because my agent was like, no, I don't believe that. That's not true. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is. So, yeah.
For me, being in the independent publishing industry, being a Black woman, I have never had a problem speaking up. I've had to speak up for myself a few times when I've arrived at a big fashion event in New York, I won't be specific, and I give my name and they look at me surprised, because the publication that they're following, they thought it was, you know, led by a white woman, and I'm not, clearly. So for me, if I were, you know, involved with an event that I was covering, and a model that came up to me and said, hey, can I, you know, share this with you, this is what's happening, I'm going to the person in charge. I won't make a big scene, but I will go to the person in charge. And you know, starting my own business on my own during a recession, I really don't worry about losing work, because I've had to create work for myself.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in living in fear of losing something when I know that I'm talented and I'm smart and I can create more things. So I think that I would always want someone to be comfortable coming to me and telling me something that's just amiss. Because sometimes, and I think that people who are white, who are in these industries, need to understand that racism is so passive aggressive and slight, you'll miss it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we pick up on it because we've had to deal with it for so long. It's quick, we know exactly what it is. So when I say speak up on it, it's because a lot of, you know, we have it for so long in fear of losing a job, in fear of losing money, credibility, whatever it is. So the environment's conditioned to, you know, don't say anything. But for me, yeah, come to me, and this is what has happened. And it may not be racism, it could be something else. It could be, you know, a model saying, I'm not really comfortable undressing in front of this person. It could be something like that. And I'm happy to know that the models that I've worked with know they can come to me, because I will do my part to take care of the situation. And again, I've been running my own business for 10 years. So I've been doing it a while. I fully understand that it's going to take time for others to do that. But I don't want anybody to use that to prevent them from speaking up.
What I have noticed, what I have noticed a lot of times with racism is that when it's presented to you, it's always presented as a problem as to why they can't do something for you. You know, so it's, oh, well, you know, this is going on, you know, we can't, and what I have learned, or what I've you know, structured my life around is, you know, be prepared for some BS in an environment where you may be the only African American person of color, whatever it be. You know, prepare for something from somebody is going to, you know, give you a hard time just because, you know, you're Black. And a lot of times they assume that you don't know any better.
Yeah.
So that they can present this as a problem, do this and accept it as, you know, oh, it's a problem and not because you're Black. You know, and you know, and they think they're cute, but you know, when you counter it with being prepared with something to react to their problem, either you make them face the problem and ask them why is it a problem, and repeat the problem to them and say, now why is that really an issue? And then they're kind of like stunned, they don't know what to do, like, oh yeah, well maybe it's really not a problem, I'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I remember one, I think Melissa was the show you first saw me at when I was doing the show at NOSA. I was about to go on, and you know, I had my models lined up, and then one of the little models that they hired, all these quote unquote agency models they think are so important, decided that she didn't want to walk in my collection. You know, and you know, I was like, well, no, what's that about? I'm like the next person going on. And the little stage manager comes up to the little headphone, whatever, and she's like, well, she said she doesn't want to walk in your collection. She wants to know if you have a dress instead of what you gave her. And I'm like, well, since when do models choose what they're gonna wear?
Exactly.
On a runway?
Exactly.
And I was just like, but you know, it was funny because what I learned when I do these big runway shows is to bring an assistant with me. Make sure I have somebody that's there for me to do work just for my issue, whatever's going on at the time. And the person I bought happened to be one of my models that I use regularly, and she was African American. I mean, you know, she was everything, tall, great cheekbone, all that stuff. So I turned to the little stage manager and I said, oh, she doesn't want to walk in my collection. She goes, fine. I said, fine. And I snapped my fingers. I bring my own models. And I pointed to my assistant. I said, go get dressed. And she got dressed. And then the stage manager told me, oh, she can't do that because she's not one of the models that were in the pool. And I was like, trust me when I say she's a qualified model. She can more than handle herself on the runway. And I said, and he said, oh, we can just try on, you know, we'll fit somebody else. I'm like, I'm going on next. How am I gonna fit somebody now? And yes. I'm about to go on. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're lining up to go on, and you told me I'm gonna fit another one of your models of a pool after I went through all this already, and then she decides, you're letting her decide she can't.
Exactly. She does not get to decide. They should.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, what are you talking about? And you're paying these girls? I mean, come on. You know, and I said, don't worry about it. I brought a model, and she's gonna walk. Yeah. And she was fantastic. I mean, she closed the show, and you know, people were like blown away. And I was like, yes. You know, and I was like, you know, I learned and make sure I bring a model just in case some crap like that happens, you know, where, you know, someone just decides they want to give you a hard time.
Yeah. What about you, Dale? Dale, what would you do if one of your models came to you, a model of color like I did my agent? What would you have done?
I would definitely contact the client, and like Tiffany said, you definitely have to alert them, and I'd find the person with the authority. I wouldn't necessarily go directly to the person that it happened with right away. I usually like to deal with the higher levels, or I'd have a conversation first with the person that it happened with and hear that side of the story. I'd want to hear what everyone has to say, but I like to keep the ties with the high level people who can change the policy and make a difference. So first I'd hear all sides, and then I'd go higher level up to someone who can make a change. Because I think if one person's doing it in a room and it would pass by and was acceptable, it needs to be like a company-wide change. So, and I feel like a lot of high-level executives don't know what's going on, like on the, within the offices on a day-to-day basis either. So if it's happening in one area, it might be happening in others. So I would want to like hit it head on and go high level.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that's what I was hoping. But again, I don't know if it's because I'm in Minnesota, because of our, our state that we're in, but they just have not been as supportive. And it's usually only a handful of us. When I was hot, I was a model. Now it's maybe another 1 or 2 models you just see all the time. It's not, 5 or 10. It's only like 1 or 2. I mean, I worked all the time, and it was like I was the Black girl. And it's really sad. And with my company, I've even had specifically a couple of white models say to me on sets, why do you have a modeling company that you're coaching and teaching other models? That's taking food out of our mouths, and we can't. I said, let me tell you something, baby. And that's how I talk. That's how I talk. What's for me, it's for me. And if you have a problem with me coaching and teaching other models, that's your insecurity. Models that were white did not like me coaching and teaching other models how to do our job. I'm secure. I'm not insecure. So I love it. I love helping other models, and they did not like that. So, I don't get that concept.
Right. Yeah, I don't get that concept either. I seem to be like you in that respect, that I was the model for years, and I was always like helping give overflow work to them or teach them how to do it better. And that's what I like about managing models, that you could train. To me, education is so huge. So on all levels. So it comes to this, educating the companies about what's going on with their company and how they can change it for the better, and also for the people going there. So yeah, I would want to always hear from the models. And I feel like sometimes models might not speak up either. Like a lot of times I won't hear things about my company because like, oh, well, we don't want to bother you or something. I'm like, oh, no, I'm here with big ears. Like, you've got to come and tell, like, if good or bad, or, what's going on in your day, what's going on in your career, what do you need, what do you want? So yeah, I think it's that transparency and open connectivity that people need to communicate. It's all about communication. And I think that, so, now it's great that the conversation started, so let's just keep it going. So we can all
Thank you guys all for coming. I'm sorry we went 30 minutes over, but it was such a fascinating conversation, and I just really appreciate all of your time so much. Miss Denisha, let us know when the book is released. So
I'm still trying. Yeah, I have nothing. I don't know nothing about publishing, so I've been seriously like just trying to knock on different doors and get different advice.
I have helped someone self-publish a book on Amazon before, so.
Well, it's ready. It's ready to go.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you any tips on how to do that. So
thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a really great weekend, and we'll see you next week.